When you're in the market for a new cell phone, but aren't ready for that 2-year commitment, make Yakety Yak Wireless your first stop. Our experienced sales staff will help you choose the phone that's best for you. We carry a vast array of basic and smartphones, and at Yakety Yak, you can try it before you buy it. Looking to save some money? We sell used and unlocked phones and provide the best in iPhone repair. Come into Yakety Yak Wireless for all your mobile phone needs.
Hi everyone, today we're going to fix an actual broken iPhone 4. We need several tools. This is the iPhone. As you can see, the glass is completely shattered. If it's a newer one, you will need a pentalobe screwdriver. You should have a spudger, a nice pair of tweezers, a blue pry stick, a 000 Phillips head screwdriver, and then a flat-bladed screwdriver. It will also help to do it correctly is if you have the mesh, which you can find, as well as the adhesive kit. And then finally you will need a screen. We're going to start by taking off the bottom screws, and in this case this is an older iPhone 4, so it doesn't have the pentalobe, it just has straight Phillips head screws. I will preface this by saying that you should, this is for demonstration purposes only. If you're not experienced at this, don't attempt because you can break valuable parts of your iPhone. The back slides up and lifts off, exposing the internals. First thing that we need to do, and hopefully you turned the phone off before you began this, is to remove the battery. There is one screw at the base of the connector for the battery right there. We're going to remove this screw. Underneath this, when you lift off the connector, there's a little attenuator that you will be removing. You'll see it in a second here. We're going to use a blue pry stick to pop off the connector. Just pops straight up. And you can see it just fell off into my finger there. That's the actual attenuator, and I'll show you where that goes. It's going to fit in, turn it 90 degrees right there. Okay, now, a lot of people pull up on this plastic tab to remove the battery. If you break that tab, Apple knows you've worked on your iPhone. So, we use a spudger and come in from the opposite end, and you can do it from both sides to release the adhesive that's holding down the battery. One of our little tricks that we use to make sure that it goes back together exactly the way we took it apart. You see, I'm going to come in from the other side and gently do this. Don't apply too much pressure to the edge of the motherboard there. This battery is unusually well stuck down. This iPhone that I'm taking apart has never been apart before, so this is, you're kind of seeing it on how it actually happens rather than watching those videos where they've taken the same phone apart 10 times. Now, another trick that we have is right here. That is a tamper-resistant sticker that Apple looks for to make sure no one's played with the iPhone. You can either use a razor blade or a sharp pair of tweezers and very gently pry this sticker up. And you can actually lift the entire thing off like that and set it aside to reinstall, and you can lay it back down. That way, if you have other issues to go into Apple with, they won't know that you've actually worked on the iPhone. Okay, take a zoom in here. Now we've got several things we need to disconnect. We have a lower EMI shield, which we're going to work on right now. One thing when you're taking this phone apart, most of the screws are different, and as you can sort of see in the top left-hand corner of the shot here, I am arranging the screws and the pieces in a certain order so that makes it easier for them to go back together. This is the top EMI shield. It just lifts off after you remove the two screws. Next we have, that was the flex cable EMI, now we have the top EMI shield. And for the top EMI shield there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws holding that down. So we're going to go ahead and remove that. Every one of these screws is different. And you can see me arranging them in order in the top part of your screen here. That's a really long one. And then here's the 5th screw. Now your way to remove the EMI shield is use a pair of tweezers and come in from the bottom side of it. And there's a little clip that's holding it in. And you just pull out on that clip and the whole thing lifts off. Make sure you don't grab any of the flex cables because you'll tear them. And there you go. It's off. Okay, now that we've done that, we have some cables to disconnect. Oh wait, actually we're going to remove the vibration motor first. 2 screws on the vibration motor. both different sizes. You have to remove the vibration motor to get to the top right corner screw holding in the screen. There's the vibration motor. Set that aside. Okay, now we're going to pop off some of these flex cables. First will be the dock port connector flex cable. It has adhesive holding it down, so just be gentle when you pull it out. You'll watch here. You see that? You can see it stick a little bit. There's the adhesive. Just try and be careful on how you pull it off. Next, we're going to remove the digitizer flex, the LCD, and then the vibration, or the flexes that control the volume buttons, mute, earpiece jack. So there's one of the first ones. There's the second and third. They usually pop off together. Then you have the digitizer, and finally the LCD flex cable. Now you've removed all of the flex connectors. The next thing to do after you do this is to remove, and you can do this at the beginning, but I like to do it here, is to remove the SIM card tray. Because if you try and remove the motherboard without pulling out the SIM card tray, you will break the motherboard. So go ahead and use a large size paper clip and remove that. Set that aside. And now you have 3 screws that are holding down. Oh wait, before we do that, we're actually going to remove the lower antenna flex. You can see this is a very tiny little cable. Be really careful taking this thing off. I just use a pair of tweezers to kind of pop it off and then use my thumb to feed it out of the way. You don't want to, when you push it back down, you want to be careful too, because the metal isn't real strong and you can bend and break it. There are 3 screws to remove the motherboard. 2 of them are Phillips head. 1 of them is a flat blade. So here's the bottom one, which actually also holds down the dock port. There's the middle one. And now the top one, top right, is actually a special screw, and it takes a flat-bladed screwdriver to get it out. All right, go ahead and remove that. Okay, now with the 3 of those out, motherboard literally just lifts on out of there. There you go. Notice I left the camera actually connected. You don't need to disconnect the camera. From here, we're going to remove the lower, the speaker box and antenna assembly. It's 1 screw at this point because you've already done the left one when you took out the motherboard. And we're just going to pop that off of there. There we go. Now on this, you can see these 4 little tabs. Those tabs actually need to sit in, and you'll see this when we put it back together. They need to sit in between the mid plate and the little gap for where the dock port goes, because if you don't do it right, you can break those off. There are 10 screws holding on the screen. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. The 6 side screws all have washers. Don't lose the washers. Make sure they go back in. They help hold the screen on properly. We're going to go ahead and take these off. While we're doing this, I will mention that Yakety Yak Wireless repairs about 200 iPhones a month. We also buy and sell used phones. Our store is located in Colleyville, Texas. Our phone number is 817-399-1000. You can send your phones in to us and we will fix them for you. We have a 1-day turnaround time. You can find our website at yakitup, that's YAKITUP, DFW.com. I'm trying to build videos for folks that show what it's like to actually take apart your phone rather than some of the demonstrators. You know, it's a lot easier to take apart a phone that doesn't have a broken glass because the glass stays intact. When we start to peel this glass off, glass goes everywhere. I'm hoping to have an iPad video up here in the next week or 2. Now you can see how I laid everything out. I've got the dock port connector and its screw, the vibration motors, the EMI shield. Then I have the mid EMI shield and its 2 screws. I've got the battery, and notice the little tamper sticker. I've got the bottom screws there. Those are the 3 screws for the mid plate, and then that's the entire screw assembly holding on the screen. That makes it a lot easier to put it back together. Now to get the screen off, you're going to use a blue pry stick and a heater. Now on your heater, if you have one like I do, you can actually set the temperature, set it to 140 degrees. If you don't have that and you're using a normal heat gun, put it on low And don't do it too close to the screen because you can melt the components. I just heat it up a little bit to make the adhesive a little easier. Then I push at the mid plate and stick my pry stick in because there's no adhesive at the mid plate. This one's actually going to come apart fairly easily because the glass is so shattered. There's not much for the adhesive to adhere to. Notice here, so you can see me pushing with my thumb to get purchase in there. And we're prying it off, and then you're going to notice that pieces of glass are just going to start falling off. There's the first one. And there's another one. It's really important as you clean this thing up that you make sure you get all the glass out. So there's the actual screen. We're just going to take that and throw that away. Now, we're just going to pick some glass off. Notice this piece here actually has a little spacer that goes inside the front camera. Right there. So we're going to pop that off. Don't lose that because you're going to use that when we reapply it. You see if there's any pieces of glass stuck to it, peel them off. Now, the easy way to get all the glass off the front of the screen is to peel the adhesive off. There's a couple pieces. There's actually 4 pieces of adhesive. So we're going to go pull the first one off. Here. And this will help get rid of any glass that's left on there. One other little tip for you. One of the places where the glass really likes to get stuck is underneath the home button. And you won't notice it, and you'll put the screen back together. Everything will go back down nice and neat. You'll push down on that home button and crack the glass. So make sure you use compressed air, which you'll see in a second, to blow out underneath the home button. Alright, peeling off these pieces. So there's like glass stuck on the stickers here. Some people have asked whether you need an adhesive kit. Technically, no. You can get away with peeling off the adhesive and mounting the screen without adhesive. The adhesive just helps everything seat better and reduces it gives it a cushion when you're pushing down on it to help it prevent it from breaking. Some people use glue. Don't ever use glue on a cell phone. There's no reason for it. If you're using glue, you shouldn't be repairing a cell phone. If you pay someone to fix it and they use glue, get your money back. Okay, so you can see here, you can see the mess that we made. So now, what we're going to do is check underneath that home button, make sure there's nothing under there. We're going to take some compressed air and blow out any small shards of glass. Be careful using the compressed air around all your screws because you can end up blowing those all around too. Okay, there's our cleaned off and ready to reinstall iPhone 4 mid plate. First thing we're going to do is get this glass out of the way. Okay, got that out of the way. Now we're going to apply the stickers. And I just use a pair of tweezers and line it up. It's actually not too tough to do. You just don't want to make sure you don't want to cover that top proximity sensor, which is in the center of the phone up near the top. It's kind of gold colored. If you cover that up, the phone won't work right. Okay, almost done applying these adhesives. Okay. Now we're going to take that the mesh. Let's see. Actually, we're going to take the screen. You peel this blue backing off the screen right there. That's just to protect it. And then we're going to take the mesh and we're going to apply the mesh to the screen rather than to the phone. Mesh I have has a little bit of stickiness on one side of it. Remember to try and apply it straight. If it's crooked, you'll be able to tell that the cross hatches are crooked when you rebuild the phone. It should just stick right down in there. You're all set with that. Now you're going to take the little spacer, and it only fits in properly one way, so just turn it until it snaps in there. See me turning it there? Okay, now that's in, and it's flush. After this, we're going to peel off the top adhesive, and then we'll be ready to actually put the screen back on. Here we go. You can cut your own adhesive, but there's plenty of places that sell the pre-cut 3M adhesive. It's the best stuff. It's exactly what Apple uses. So it goes on real nice. Okay, now when you're feeding the screen in, it goes through that gap in the midboard right there. And here's another tip. The digitizer cable is a longer cable than the LCD, and it actually has a loop on it near the end of it. And a lot of times you'll put the screen together, and that loop will get pinched. If it gets pinched in there and then you try and connect the digitizer, you'll rip the flex cable. So you can see me here struggling with it a little bit because it's trying to stick to the adhesive. But what you actually need to do is you need to make sure that it feeds all the way through. And when it does, you can see not only the full length of the cable, but you can see where that little loop is on it as well. After this, it should snap down. Make sure your home button seats in properly. And then you're ready to put the screws on. I always put the corner screws in first, and I actually apply pressure to the screen in the midboard with my fingers to hold it tightly together. You don't want any gapping in there. The reason I do the corner screws first is that they really don't allow for gapping because there's not a channel they go into. There's actually a hole, and if the holes don't line up, it doesn't go together. But even after I put these 4 screws in, I check the gapping on the sides to make sure that there's none there. Because if there is, and customer pushes down on the phone, they will break the screen. It's also a good time to talk about screens. Not all screens are created equal, and you notice the ones I use have the LCD and digitizer bonded together. There are places that will sell you just the digitizer, and if you can separate the digitizer and LCD, you are a far better repairer than I am. I've never seen anybody be able to do it. If you're spending, say, under $50 for a screen itself, you are buying an inferior quality screen. Unless you're buying, 1,000 of them, like I do. I mean, if you're just buying one, you probably should be spending somewhere between $50 and $70 for that screen component. What determines a good one from a bad one is the thickness. The thickness of the screen should match as closely to possible as the Corningware one that comes from Apple. We take great pride in knowing that we have actually changed out midboards, midplates, as well as front and backs, and had Apple inspect the phones at their Genius Bar, and they have not been able to tell that we worked on the phones. So, that's kind of how you know you're doing a good job. Okay, the screws are in, and now is going to come the bottom dock port. And again, you're going to see how we seat it in, and then we're going to make sure that those little tabs are stuck down and not splayed outward. So it just kind of seats down in there. One thing to remember is this part it has a subwoofer in there, so it's got magnetization on it, and it can pick up screws if you're not careful, and a screw can be underneath there. But see how we're folding those down, making sure they're sticking in. And from here, we're going to put in the right side screw, and then we'll be ready to put in the motherboard. The motherboard in the iPhone 4, the GSM model, is a little tricky to get in, and it needs to sit completely flush. So one of the things you need to do is you kind of angle it in, and it's going to take you 4 or 5 times to get it right, so just be ready for that. But you're going to come in at an angle, and the top tab sits underneath, and then you kind of lay it down, and you'll know it sits flat if you may want to test by sticking in the SIM card tray. If it goes all the way in flush, you know you did it right. We're going to reconnect the 3 screws here. Okay, 3 screws are in and down. And now we're going to start by connecting the bottom antenna cable. And again, be really careful with this guy. It's very fragile, and what I do is I just make sure I got it lined up right, and I just use a finger just to push it down. And it'll sit totally flush and flat, and you'll know it's in there right. Don't get frustrated with it. Next one is the dock port connector. Again, it's got the adhesive, so you can tamp that down after you get it applied. There we go. Push down on the adhesive. Now you have the LCD cable first, so that's the LCD. Next is the digitizer. If it does not lay directly over the connector port and it's too short, take the phone apart and check to make sure you didn't bind up on that bind up on the cable when you built the screen. Next come the 3 connectors for the headphone jack, the volume and mute buttons, and the power button. There's 1, 2, 3. Make sure those are all seated down correctly. If you build your phone up and the digitizer, only half of it works, it means that you didn't seat the digitizer cable correctly. So you got to take part of the phone apart to get back to that. I'm going to put the vibration motor back together. There we go. Put in the left screw. It's the longer one, and then make sure it's aligned correctly and put in the right screw. Next you have the EMI shields. We're going to put the top one in. You seat it from the bottom clip that you took it out from, so you just put it back in reverse order. There's that clip right there. There's where it seats in. So you just seat it in from that angle and then push down. Make sure it's all lined up, and then you have your 5 screws to put back in. Remember, all the screws are different. I usually start with the top screw because that just kind of helps center everything. Okay. Next is going to be the mid EMI shield, the one that covers the dock port connector. And again, screws are different, so just keep an eye on them. After this, you have this. I put the SIM card tray in. If it doesn't sit flush, I'm taking the phone apart again. Next, we have that little bitty sticker. Don't forget that. That's probably the most important thing in this whole video. I can't tell you how many phones we repair that other repair shops have done where the guys just screw right through that sticker. It amazes me that they don't take the extra 30 seconds to take this sticker off, because it saves the customer a whole lot of trouble down the road. Okay, now we have you peel back on this, the battery tab right there, and you're ready to seat the battery. Remember, you got to put in that little attenuator piece. So it just goes in just like so. And then what I do is I actually feed the battery in from the opposite side, so that way I don't have to fight with keeping that piece in place. So I line it, hold it down with my thumb, and then seat the battery from this direction rather than coming in from the outside edge. Click the battery cover down. You have 1 screw holding down the battery connector. Yeah, here we go. Okay, now the back goes on. Seat it down properly, slide it into place. Don't forget to put in the 2 bottom screws. Tighten these, but don't reef on them because you can strip them, and stripping them makes for a very hard phone to take apart the next time. Okay, now we're going to turn the phone on. If everything worked right, it should light up. And you let it get to its boot up position, and then check the screen to make sure everything works out right. And if it does, you've done a great job. And thank you for watching Yakety Yak Wireless's video. And we hope you come see our other ones and write us some comments. We can always use them. Thanks.